So we're going to sit here today and talk about that last deer season.
Yeah.
Do you know, is that like the worst harvest record on?
Well, it's got to be the worst one in quite a few years. 2014, if you remember, was a real bad year. But what happened then was we got some really heavy snows early on, and the deer had migrated out, and people couldn't even get to their camps. So there was like very little hunting that year by anybody because you couldn't get to where you needed. I went around here, before rifle season. The deer were right up to their necks, walking, heading to the deer yards. So it was like really tough, and so that winter was probably like real close to what this last year was as far as deer harvest goes. But the thing with that is a lot of bucks didn't get shot that year, and the next year looked pretty good because a number of bucks survived. So it's kind of like, oh. And the DNR calls it a bounce back, that it bounced back that year. But my feeling is that, well, yeah, but like I say, you had all these deer that survived. So I don't know. This last year, I know weather was a factor. Deer just weren't moving. And it was kind of a strange thing. They only seemed to move at night, or they just weren't moving around very much as active as they normally are. The weather was just unusual. But deer number has been going down for a long time. And I've said before, it's been, pretty much the last 20 years, deer numbers have been going down. And so, it's kind of an ongoing thing. There's a number of reasons why. We have this very high predator load, and people keep focusing on wolves, and, they're definitely part of it. But habitat's also a big part of it. I have these huge concerns with what's going on with our hemlock. DNR says that we've lost something like 97% of our hemlock between 1850 and the year 2000. Well, okay, so that was a huge change, but since 2000, we're still like cutting and harvesting hemlock, which is like to me, it's like a super wildlife tree. All kinds of different wildlife use it, but deer, that's where they like to bed. And what I see happening is a number of the commercial forest landowners are cutting it basically just to get rid of it. There's very little timber value in it, but they're trying to get rid of it to make room for more maple. At least that's my thoughts on it here, is that, they're getting it out of the way. And what happens is, like now when the deer are migrating, the deer like to migrate from like one stand of hemlock to another stand of hemlock on their way to the deer yard or wintering complex. So they will they might hang out here, like they hang out at my place here for like weeks at a time before they move out. And so I'll have deer from the west move in, and they'll be here for a while. Got this nice stand of hemlock in a south-facing ridge. There's food here, and they'll stay here for a couple of weeks. Well, when you take those stands of hemlock out, and it's just maple, they just walk through there. They don't even stop. Okay? So what happens is the deer go right to the yard, and then they end up being in the yard a whole lot longer. You've got this thing going on where they're, so if they're in the wintering complex longer, then they're using up the food, they're burning up their fat reserves, and you end up with more dead deer is what happens. And, it puts more strain on that wintering complex. And so you've got this cycle kind of going on right now that, as we lose hemlock, and cedar is a huge, component in southern UP for sure. And so, as we lose hemlock and cedar, we lose that cover. And, a lot of people don't see that, but I kind of feel like whatever landowners can do, whatever they can do to save those trees and do what they can for habitat, I think that's really a key thing. Whatever we can do to help deer like be super healthy going into winter, or whatever we can do to help them with early food in the spring, I just think that can help. We can only do what we can do. And so, if more people did those sort of things, I think our deer herd would be better off. And yeah, believe me, I'm a huge proponent of being able to harvest wolves and managing these animals. But and so is Marquette County Whitetails. I mean, there's a ton of groups throughout Michigan that are very supportive of being able to manage these animals. But we can't legally, and it's a crazy thing because there's this wide open season on coyotes, and then like every wolf is protected. So it's kind of I don't know. It's very frustrating for a lot of people. I get that, and wolves are from what I'm reading, they are the number one cause of mortality for adult does. So, if they're taking out the does, we don't have as many fawns. And I don't know, there's just a ton of reasons here of what's going on with our deer herd. This predator-prey study that was done was a great study. But in the end, what I see is they were showing fawn survival. Well, they only showed the first 16 weeks of life of fawns. That's all. They didn't do the whole year. When they looked at the whole year, it was a different story on like how many fawns survived. And it was really low. And so, yeah, you have just a number of issues here. One thing we can do too is maybe we need to issue a few more bear tags. Maybe we need to control that population a little bit. From what I've read, it's like they're responsible for 15% of fawn mortality. Any little thing we can do can help. Marquette County Whitetails is proposing that we move some of these lines about where we can take antlerless deer and maybe take less antlerless deer, kind of cut back for a few years here, until we start seeing the population grow. Does are the primary animal that, helps the population. So maybe we need to cut back on antlerless take here and move those lines further south. We still have those issues in Menominee County and the very, that part of the U.P. where there's too many deer. And yeah, we need to keep taking antlerless deer there. But, I'm hearing from all across the U.P. that people are frustrated. I think we're going to have a lot less hunters next year because people are so frustrated with what's going on with our deer herd. And this year was just kind of like, this was kind of the tipping point. It's been going down for years, deer numbers. A lot of people have walked away from deer hunting. Camps have been for sale. They've moved. People have just gotten tired of it. People want to see deer. And so, I mean, I can go on about all the different stories I've heard this year. Myself, I saw 3 deer for rifle season. I'm a pretty serious hunter. I put my time in. I got 9 cameras out. I'm hunting on my property. I'm hunting on other public lands. I move around, and I'm not hunting out of one box. And yeah, I saw 3 deer for rifle season. And so it's like, it's a pretty tough situation. We need to do some serious, consideration. And I know I'm happy to see that the NRC, Natural Resources Commission, has asked to form these deer management initiative groups. We'll see what goes on with that. There's one for the UP and one for the LP. And I'm hopeful that people come to the table with real interested in doing something. And just this week, there's the UP Habitat Work Group is meeting, and I've been a part of that from the start. And we've got recommendations for like all these different wintering complexes across the UP. We're hoping that we can get some more active work forward on this. Recommendations are good, but if we're not seeing action, well.
Today's Discover the UP podcast is brought to you by Big Valley Ford, Dodge Chrysler Jeep in Ewan, Michigan.
So
I was going to ask you what the UP Habitat Work Group does. I mean, what is that mission, and what does that group do?
So the work group, like I say, looked at all the different. First of all, try to identify, map all these different wintering complexes. They mapped like 50 some of them across the UP. And you can go to the DNR website. They have that on there. If you look at boards and commissions, I think you can find the Habitat Work Group. But you can actually like look up the wintering complex by you, or wherever. Hey, so across the UP, and I think a lot of people don't even know where their deer go for sure. So these are all mapped out, and then there's they went to all these complexes and looked at, tried to look at, what's the percentage of shelter compared to the amount of food. And so try to decide what they need more. Do they need more shelter? Do they need more food? And so, they're trying to make recommendations based on that. And so this isn't just, one little spot, but it's like within like a 2-mile radius of these wintering complexes on what we can do or what would be good things to recommend. Okay? So if there's food over here, the deer will go to it and muck on that. And, the idea is to try to get something to help them get through the winter, and provide the right amount of cover. A number of our wintering complexes, this is another thing, of our wintering complexes have been cut over the years. There's been some big ones down by Escanaba and everything, they were cut, You lose that, thermal cover, like to call it, you lose that shelter, and then it's like, well, great, deer got a lot to eat that year, but, logging practices are such now, they can clean up an area pretty quickly as far as making a cut, and so, you lose that space and you're going to have less deer in the future. You're just going to have that. And, deer will try to go here or go there, and, people will feed them a little bit or whatever, and, may or may not help. And so there's a lot to it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to it.
Now, a lot of these deer wintering complexes, are those mostly on federal land, private land, commercial forest land? Where are they?
I would say most of them are probably on commercial forest land. The state owns about 20% of them, and so but then you got the federal forests. They own some too on both our federal forests up here, and then there's commercial forest land. And so what's neat about this Habitat Work Group is, we have the state there at the table. We have the feds at the table. We have some of the larger commercial forest landowners at the table, all trying to work together on, what's best management practices. And they've all agreed to kind of lay off these wintering complexes as far as cutting. But I don't know, I feel like if we can get the state to manage their properties maybe as show places, that other owners would be doing the same. I kind of feel like if we can manage these deer wintering complexes much like they do with the GEMS, the grouse enhancement areas where they do intensive management, they do that too downstate with these state game areas. They go in and they plant things, they, make certain cuts and try to do, like I say, intensive management here where they would, get some food on the ground or get some, some food coming up, hey, essentially, which is better yet. And work on that cover, part aspect of it.
So you don't feel they're intensively managed up here?
No. For the most part, as far as the state goes, it's mostly hands off. They do make cuts at times. They did some by Harlow Lake here the last few years. Did some cutting in the hardwoods, but I just feel, and I think a lot of other people, that more could be done. And the state has a number of programs. What they try to do things. They have this deer range improvement program, and you can get grants. Marquette County Whitetails has gotten involved with a number of those, and so have other organizations. The other chapters or other organizations have been involved with that. We work with the Conservation District on that. But it hasn't been enough to move the needle. It hasn't been enough, hey? So it's like, well, what can we do? Our deer herd's still going down. We're still, have a declining deer herd here. So it's gotten to the point is like, well, what do we need to do? What is going to make an impact here as far as stopping the decline or reversing it at all? It's kind of a big thing, and it's a lot to look at, and it's going to take some real commitment. I kind of feel like we need buy-in right from the state administration, because we need forest management to be involved. We need DNR Wildlife Division to be involved. We need, cross-department work to be done here. And so it's a big deal. How are we going to restore hemlock across the landscape? When the state says they only own X amount of land. But the state has working with the feds on federal land. They have this good neighbor authority where they can kind of work together. And, let's kind of push that more towards wildlife. I kind of personally feel that we have so much emphasis, the state has so much emphasis on parks and trails, but there's like so little for wildlife. And so Wildlife Division's counting on, license fees. But, trails and parks, they're getting these giant grants from the state and stuff, where they're just, here, build this, do that. And one of the reasons why these people go to the parks and use these trails is to see wildlife. Hey, so I just feel like we need more emphasis on that, and so habitat's the key. And if we don't focus on habitat, it's like, where are we going and why?
Today's Discover the UP podcast is brought to you by Hardcore Outfitters of Iron Mountain.
It almost feels like there's deer here, there's always going to be deer here, but obviously that's not the case. It's no.
No, and I think a lot of people don't realize when the federal wolf plan was put together, and even the state one, they both talk about ensuring enough prey for wolves and for hunters. And so here we are. Hunters are now, we're talking about cutting back on our take again here, and because of lack of deer, hey? So it's like, should hunters bear all of this, or should we be doing more? Is it, are we falling short on this? Most people feel like we are. Feel like we're like falling short on, meeting this goals of having enough prey for wolves or other predators and man. So, where do you go with that? What's the line? Where are we with it? Is like, when to decide there isn't enough here for both? And so, we have hunters making all these sacrifices. We want to, there's talk about cutting way back on any antlerless tags, antlerless take in general after most of the UP. And we've already done that for years up here where we haven't allowed antlerless take. And so it's like, where's that line? where do we cut it off? Where do we decide that, hey, something needs to be done here? And yeah.
I'm a venison hunter. I mean, I read the Facebook forums. I listen to everybody argue, and everyone's like, there's like the argument: we're taking too many does, we're taking too many bucks, we're taking, hunters can't agree on what's the best management there.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just want a deer to put in my freezer.
Sure.
So I mean, for those that are just more the the hunter gatherer that's just out there for the venison too. I mean, they.
Yeah.
They rely on that, that resource as well.
Exactly, and I do too, and so it's like to see 3 deer for, 14 days of hunting or whatever, it's like, I can see how so many people are saying, well, why am I out here? Why am I spending the time? Why am I putting the time in here? Maybe I'll just go out of state, or maybe I'll just put the gun away and go to the casino. I don't know, so, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. I'm hopeful with this deer management initiative. I'm hoping that, people there will come to the table with some plans here. And I put together a list of possible things to look at. We'll see where that goes.
Right.
But,
so that initiative, do they have dates set up for that? And they have is that group all
No. And so at the December NRC meeting, they brought this up, that they were going to form these groups. They were going to start working on it in December and January. And here we are, the middle of January. Don't have any dates. Don't know who's on it. Don't know if they're just going to do the Lower Peninsula first and then do the UP. And and so the NRC is asking that the DNR come back with some recommendations by April. And it's like, well, things are going to have to start happening here pretty soon. And so we'll see. So I'm thinking next month now things should kick in here. And I think the DNR understands we have a problem here, and they're looking at things, and so we'll see see what they come up with. Okay, so.
Yeah, I seen on your options here, end all deer hunting in the UP by December 10th. Do you feel that we have too long of a deer hunting season? That's
a complaint we often hear, and the reason that was put in there, this was years back, that was resolution was drawn up. We have a complete resolution on that. But because our deer migrate, it's kind of a big issue. Over the years, I've talked to a number of people that, they have their camp and maybe 3-4 neighbors that all agree to let this yearling buck go, and, they're only going to take a buck's a certain size, and maybe they have 6 camps that do that for a pretty big area. But when snow gets to 18 inches or whatever it is, those deer are leaving. And so when those deer migrate, they're going 10, 20, there's, 50 miles deer migrate. And so during that migration, they're going by all these hunters, hey, because people set up on the migration trails. You can't blame them. That's where the deer walk through. And anyway, so, it's been a hard thing for people to let deer go and then never see it again. And it's very frustrating. And so anyway, the idea is to protect these animals while they're in transit, going to the yard, or while they're in the yard. Right now, you can hunt with archery right to January 1st. And the deer are often in the yards, and, they're only using certain trails, just like these migration trails. They use the same trails year after year. So, you sit up along one of these trails, and you can take deer. Anyway, so the idea was to get away from that. Let these deer go to their sanctuary. Make these winter complexes a sanctuary, not some place where people are in there basically harassing them, So, and that's why they haven't allowed crossbows in the late season. 3/4 of archery hunters use a crossbow. So, people say, well, it's not that more efficient, whatever. That's not all the story here. It's like if you have 3/4 more people that can be in those yards, whatever, that's a huge thing. So, and they are more efficient. They're easier to use. That's why we have so many people using them. And yeah, it's like you sight it in, you can hit with it and, get a rest. So anyway, the idea was if we can, take the pressure off the deer when they're trying to migrate, trying to get to where their sanctuary is, why not? Why not? And it'll help some deer, but it also, like I say, it'll let them freely go to their wintering complex.
Now, do you feel so wolves, we have a lot of predators on the landscape. Wolves are the newest member of that.
Right.
So we have a lot of bears, we have a lot of coyotes, we have a lot of wolves. There's really nothing the DNR or the NRC can do since they're federally listed. But do you feel there is anything that they can do to help to possibly help the narrative of getting the wolf delisted?
Yes, I do. Because I guess my take on what the DNR has been doing over the years is and I understood it early on when we didn't have many wolves, was that they try to minimize any impact wolves might have, and try to just say, well, it's not that much of a deal, whatever. And the thing is, it's gotten to the point now is that's not the narrative anymore. We have too many wolves. We should be managing them. They need to have that message loud and clear. And and I know they've put in letters recommending that they come off the endangered species list and all, which is is what they should be doing. But I just feel like there's more they could be saying about the impacts they're having on our deer. And I think that might help sway more people. And because it's not just the feds you have to, sway. You have to sway the general public. You have to sway all these people downstate that don't understand. They have to know that, this is an issue. It's wildlife management. It's predator-prey balance. That's... I don't feel like they're explaining that well enough to the general public.
And unfortunately, the ones that are trying to explain it to the general public are I don't think, doing it in the right way.
Well, yeah. And there's a lot of that out there. And, even if somebody tries to be diplomatic about it or try to explain scientific, like me, I don't have those letters behind my name. I'm just, Joe Sportsman, Joe Woodsman, whatever. And so you just get dismissed. But when the state comes out and says something, it should mean something. And years back, the state said that wolves will take anywhere from 25 to 40 deer a year each. Okay, so if you do a little math, a lot of people use this 630 number, whatever. But even, Brian Roll admitted that the October NRC meeting, that number could actually be more like 1,400. So even if you call it 1,000 wolves, say we have 1,000 wolves, so 25 to 40 is 25,000 to 40,000 deer. Well, if it's been a long time since hunters took 40,000 deer in the UP. So when you think about that, we only took 16,000 this year. We took 22,000 last year. We took 25,000 the year before. Before that, it was more like 28,000. It was like, see where I'm going? It's like it keeps the number of deer that hunters take. It's not just because of our declining hunter numbers. It's because there's less deer. People are dropping out because there's less deer. And, the hunting tradition in the UP is so huge that it's not like downstate or even a lot of the rest of the country, because it's such a family tradition. It's such a tradition to put your meat on the table, the hunter-gatherer thing up here, and deer camps. And, you've been to a number of them, pretty lucky. Anyway, so, it's such a tradition up here that, deer hunting is going to be a big thing if we have deer. And, so for a number of years, it was like 30,000 or in the low 30s we were taking. But, I go all the way back. I'm looking at 2003, when we only had like 360 wolves, we killed like 62,000 deer. And that was like not too long after the bad winters of the mid-90s, late 90s, where we'd lost like 2/3 of our deer from those winters. So it's like the deer population used to jump back or come back, but once wolf numbers got to a certain point, I tell people they may not like crash the population immediately, but they keep the population from coming back. And so it's been happening over and over, though. And so our deer herd hasn't been able to come back. And like I said, you have all this habitat issues, but you also have a lot of predators out there. Coyotes are the main predator for fawns, and bears right up there. So, you lose them, and where are we?
Today's Discover the UP podcast is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings.
Deer season used to have such a great economic impact, especially to small towns where I live. I live in a tiny town in the middle of Ontonagon County. I mean, that was a huge draw, is deer season, and the place used to be packed. Now it's crickets. There's nobody.
Yeah.
The businesses are hurting, that time of year, and usually is a big boost going into the winter season, which is gone now.
Exactly. And, I think Ontonagon County was one of the counties where the deer kill is down 40% this year. 40%. Marquette County is the same way. And think about that. Largest county in the state, we're down 40%. And so there's serious things going on. We really need to do something here, turn things around. DNR's got to quit denying that wolves are having an impact or how much that impact is, because it is pretty big. And there's no doubt about it. I tell people that wolves are an additive that we really haven't had for about 100 years. So, we already had all these coyotes. We already had bear. We already had, bobcat, whatever, hey? But now wolves, this apex, that's really an additive that we didn't have before, and it's having an impact. There's no doubt about it. You don't have to look hard to see it, So.
Yeah, said I live, farm field. People used to drive, say like a 3-mile stretch, and you could see just even a handful, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
People would just drive our roads just for fun, just to look, because you'd see 100 deer in an evening in these fields and stuff. And I counted one day this fall. I was lucky if I saw 20.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
and
like
that's ideal time of day, I'm sure.
Yeah, in the evening, the evening time, right before, hour before sunset or something like that. And
right. Yeah.
I don't have any people driving up down my road now looking at deer, so there's that bonus, I guess.
Right. It's a lot quieter on the road. Well, it was a lot quieter here. There was hardly anybody hunting on the road here this year. It was like, and we used to have, truck after truck going by, or, people parked all along the road, different places, and we just don't have that anymore. There's a few people that hunt. I talked to one neighbor, a mile or so away. He said, "Yeah, I didn't even hunt." He said, I had, he's saying he's had pretty much as many wolf pictures as he had deer pictures, and there wasn't anything there he really wanted to spend the time at.
You feel a lot of people are staying downstate just because there's so many deer down there now compared to up here, so people aren't coming up here.
Oh, no doubt. no doubt. There's a lot of deer downstate, and people, those deer don't migrate, and so a lot of people that own land, they're managing for their deer, and they're doing all kinds of habitat work on their own properties, and so yeah, why come up here? And there's a tradition. There's a number of people that still come up. Our family has a camp east of Melstrand, and there's been people, the same family has been coming up there since the 50s. And, they use the camp, and I don't know if anybody saw a deer this year. So it's like, they have that tradition. They're still holding on to it. But it's like, how long will they do that, Yeah. So...
the DNR doesn't do like a deer population estimate anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay. So they don't really have any idea of how many deer are on the landscape. What's like a target number of deer on the landscape?
No. They used to have like population goals, and they ended that around 2006 or something. And at the time, for the deer management unit that I'm in, 007, they'd made recommendations that they'd like to see like 18 deer per square mile. And everybody thought that was a reasonable number, but they didn't have a way to get there. They didn't say like what are we going to do to get there? And, and at the time we had 10, 12 deer per square mile, whatever. And so they didn't have really a way to get there. And they just dropped that whole thing. But so now they're saying they can go by deer kill, though, to have an idea what the population's doing. They go by the buck kill. Well, where are we going with that? And I also bring up car deer accidents because people, they use that as a gauge, or people tend to, including the DNR. And so back in 2003 again, we had like 8,600 car deer accidents. Actually, it wasn't even just car deer accidents. It was deer killed. That's how they did it. They were looking at how many deer were killed. 8,600. And the most recent numbers I have from like 2020 or 2021. Anyway, it's right around 3,000.
So quite a bit less.
So quite a bit less. And now we have 65 mile an hour speed limits. We have more traffic. I mean, think about the traffic that's on the roads. Hey, all these tourists, they're not paying attention, So you would think we'd have a lot more car deer accidents. And, downstate, they're complaining about all these car deer accidents. And we're, well over a third of the state, and we have 3,000 car deer accidents. And there's 59,000 in the entire state. So it's like, we're just like a small fraction of car deer accident. It's not because we have so less people, because like I say, in the summer, fall, winter, now we got all the snowmobilers coming back up here. Now we got snow, and but.
Oh, kind of going back to wolves and something I've seen. I don't know if you had it in your notes or anything. But talking about, the wolf kills. The wolves have more of an impact just than killing, deer just outright. They're just their impact, being on the landscape in these deer wintering complexes, puts a lot of stress on the white-tailed deer.
Just having wolves there, having canines, particularly in the wintering complexes, that puts the deer on alert. That, it used to be deer would go to these wintering complexes, they'd eat what marginal food they could get, and then they'd like lay around all day chewing their cud, trying to digest this stuff. That's not the greatest. But anyway, so they'd lay around and like conserve energy. Some say their metabolism slows down. Anyway, so they burn a lot less energy. So that helps them get through the winter. But every time that adrenaline is spiked, say they get jumped, right? So, they don't get eaten, they don't get touched, but maybe a deer next to them gets it or whatever, hey? But they get jumped, they get run to the other end of the yard or wherever, and, they're bouncing along. They're burning up calories. They're burning up energy. I tell people it's like burning a candle at both ends, hey, because they're like, they only have so much fuel. The candle's only so big. And so as you're burning that up, come March, April, you're what's left, hey? And so, and I brought that up to one of the biologists. He called it secondary predation, essentially, because they're burning up that energy, and yeah, the fuel's gone. And so, I know people that supplemental feed, and they're telling me, yeah, there's either coyotes there or there's wolves there, and so they're actually happy to see coyotes because there's less wolves. There's less deer going to get killed by coyotes than do by wolves, and so the wolves will show up once a week or whatever, kill a few deer. The coyotes are right behind them. They're cleaning up or whatever, and they take deer too. So it's like, it's just kind of an ongoing thing where a lot of these deer in these wintering complexes are just getting bumped, every day, every couple of days, whatever, twice a day. You don't know, so they're not just always laying around chewing their cud. And that's the ideal. It's just getting through winter, so yeah. So that's another factor, it's to me, it's one more reason why we have less healthy deer, why we need better habitat, why we need more food, because they need more food. They need more food now without those, than they did without those predators. So
today's Discover the UP podcast is brought to you by BAM Tools.
Is there anything you feel that people, hunters can do to help the situation?
Well, like I mentioned earlier about habitat, they can do some work on their own. They can look on their own property at their camp or whatever land they might own, or, there's these grants that are available to do habitat work, and, maybe you can do something, work with commercial forest landowners. That's what we've done. UP Whitetails of Marquette County has done. We've tried to work with commercial forest landowners, and, maybe right after a cut, they let us come in and plant the roads, or, plant some wildlife trees there, that sort of thing. And so whatever anybody can do in that area, and like I said, the state only owns about 20% of wintering complexes, so who owns the rest? Some of that's private. And so whatever they can do, to look at those recommendations for those places, they might even be able to get grants to get some work done there. Come in and have some trees planted or whatever it happens to be, whatever the recommendations are. So there is that. They could be attending meetings too. I was at the October NRC meeting. It was in Escanaba. They have one meeting a year in the UP, and there was maybe a half a dozen sportsmen there, hunters that signed up to speak. That was it. And there was probably close to as many anti-hunters there. So it's like, yeah, pretty easy to be a keyboard warrior, but who's going to get up? Go to Escanaba. I mean, how hard is that? Hey, and just being there is a good thing. Even if you don't speak, or just get up and say, you're frustrated, or whatever it happens to be, you're not happy with the situation, you'd like to have more deer on our landscape, or you're concerned about this or that. And, that's the idea, is to, use those public forums like that, but not just, whining on Facebook, let's say. And, there's a lot of people that get pretty hot about that, but you can say all you want on Facebook, but who's listening besides somebody that agrees with you? Yeah. You're not reaching Lansing. You're not reaching the managers of our resources. So, I got involved early on. I had a older guy who would take me around to different meetings and stuff, and Cliff Waters really... he knew places all around the state. He'd been all over the place, and so we'd go to this, go to that, and put our 2 cents in, essentially. And here I am still doing it. He's passed away, but I'm still doing it. So,
or joining groups like the Whitetails or the different sportsmen's clubs across the...
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because together you have a voice, And that's why I got involved, too, with Michigan United Conservation Clubs. It's because, they're based out of Lansing, but it's clubs from all over the state. There's like 40,000 members. There's a couple hundred clubs, organizations that belong to it, but it gives you one voice. Let me give an example of that. Just this last Thursday at the NRC meeting, I'm watching... MUCC puts it on their Facebook site. You can watch the NRC meeting, and you can watch it live. So I'm watching it live, and anyway, a woman gets up and speaks about she wants to ban lead ammunition, and I get it. Eagles have died, different wildlife, from ingesting lead, and part of it is from hunting bullets. Anyway. People put out their bloodshot meat. Well, that bloodshot meat is bloodshot because there's lead splattered in it. Anyway, so I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, we have a resolution that we put in asking people to voluntarily not use lead and go to the copper and monolithic bullets, whenever possible. And, to voluntarily do it, not make a law change like some other states already have. Okay? So if we can voluntarily get people to switch over or to have a better understanding about it all, why not? So I texted, I got a hold of MUCC, the guy that was from MUCC that's at the meeting. He signs up to speak. He gets up and talks about not using lead ammunition, MUCC stance on it. So here I am, I'm out here in the sticks of northern Marquette County, but, I just dropped a message to them, can you speak on this? And they did. This was like in 10 minutes time. I don't have to drive to Lansing to get a point across. I can do that right from here. So, being involved with an organization like that has that sort of presence, they're at all the hearings, they're at all these legislative things, they're there. And they've helped steer a lot of legislation because there's a lot of dumb legislation that comes out. Somebody will have some idea, and well, why don't we do this, or where we should go here, or whatever. And so MUCC's trying to track all that. And so they spend a lot of time and money just trying to, maybe help rewrite something that's better for sportsmen, better for fishing, whatever it happens to be. And so, there's a big force that's really not getting appreciated enough. If more people join that and got their action alerts or had a better understanding of what they're working on, I think, it'd better educate the people of the UP, and maybe more people would act, more people would be involved.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people think, they're like, what can I do? They don't feel like they're...
Yeah.
I feel like they're feeling pretty helpless at this point.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and you can't blame them, But that's one thing that they could do is get involved with MUCC. I recommend that to everybody. It's if you care about our resources, if you care about how they're being managed, or if we can fix some bad legislation or maybe right legislation, so.
Do you ever feel like, the deer herd will never be what it once was?
Correct.
I would imagine that's just not possible. With
right.
The land that we have, with
yeah.
habitat, the predator loads.
Right. Yeah, and but there's a number of Marquette County Whitetails and a number of organizations supplemental feed across the UP. You see it in the Keweenaw, Newberry, Feburary, you name it. And but we'd like to be able to get away from that. If we can get these wintering complexes, in better shape so they can carry some more deer, then we wouldn't feel like we had to do that in order to even have a deer herd. So Chad Stewart from DNR said, these northern areas, and probably where you are, there's like 3 to 10 deer per square mile. Okay, so you own a 40, that's only, there's 16 40s in a square mile. You could own a 40, you could own 80 with no deer on it, And so, that's not a lot of deer. And, one of the reasons why we, against antlerless take over a lot of the area is because if you take out that prime age doe, that's the producer, she knows how to raise the deer, the fawns. Her fawns survive, and maybe she puts out twin fawns, So if you take out that prime doe, you've actually affected that population. That's a population effect because say you got 6 deer and you take out that one doe, it's like, what do you got next year? You got some yearling doe that never raised a fawn, trying to replenish the resource. And
they say, the yearling does, they'll only produce one fawn, and once a doe gets to about 2 years, they'll, at 2, 3, 4 years old, a doe is always going to have twins or triplets.
Oftentimes,
at that point.
yeah.
A lot of them don't survive, due to predation, but...
Yeah. But the rate of survival goes up as the doe gets older because she's been there. She's been through these different situations, with predators, whatever. And so, yeah, they're better at it. So that's why those animals are so important.
No, that makes sense. So you, in your move the line where antlerless takes love with archery, toy line south of US 2 from Espinal, just limiting the antlerless deer to those higher deer populations in the southern part of the UP.
Exactly. Menominee still has a lot of deer in some of those areas, right around there is where most of our deer is. Right now you can get antlerless tags over a good part of the UP. They have these areas, 351, 352, or whatever it's called. But anyway, you can buy antlerless tags, or you can take antlerless deer with your archery equipment over, at least 2/3 of the UP. And so if we move those lines further south, where most of the deer are, where the higher deer numbers are, maybe that's something we can do that'll help. And those sort of changes are meant to be short term, to see, say in 5 years, see if we've done anything. But in a number of these recommendations too, any one of them won't do a lot. But when you put them together, it's like, okay, we've reduced the take on antlerless deer. We're doing habitat work. The habitat work is always long term. Although, if they were, if people are, interested in intensely managing these wintering complexes, maybe they're going to do a small cut. That's immediate. Okay? And the next year you have stump shoots coming up. And, stump shoots are like a favorite food for deer. So, if you can put some tops down now and get some stump shoots up, you've done something, hey? And so, yeah. But the antlerless thing should just be a short-term thing where we know we need to do something here to control the take. And it's a shame, like I say, it's a shame we're in that position, It
is. I feel like we kind of took for granted there would always be deer, and there would always be enough deer for anyone that wanted to go out there and harvest a deer.
Exactly. Yeah. Buck or doe, it's like, why not? But we're in a situation here now, like I say, if there's 3 to 10 deer per square mile, you don't want to be taking those prime does out of there. You just don't. And so, a buck can breed several does, but like I say, if you lose that doe, you've lost something. And so all we can do is do what we can do.
So you'd say like the peak of deer hunting was probably what, like mid-90s or?
Yeah, well, we had the most deer, in the early 90s, up until we had these 2 bad winters in a row there, in 96, 97, I think it was. And that's when we had the most deer. But we actually had too many deer at the time. And, yeah. I mean, at the time, I tried to get things to loosen up to be able to take more antlerless deer. And it didn't happen much. But, yeah, we had too many deer. But what happens with a resource is, hey, if there's like an overload of this one animal, predator numbers are going to come up. And that's what happened. Hey, we had those 2 winters. There was dead deer everywhere. It was winter of the 96 and 97. And so those springs, they were just dead deer. And so all the predators had really easy living. And they just multiplied. And, now we are where we're at here. So, because there weren't many coyotes then. There just weren't. And, of course, the price of a coyote hide was probably a lot higher then, too. People were trapping them or people were on them more. But they're, like I say, after those winters, the population of predators started, and that's, started going up. And that's when wolves really started coming on the landscape, too. It was easy living. So, and no competition because there weren't a lot of wolves. But now we're at a point where every niche is filled with wolves. In fact, one thing I was thinking about as far as moose go, or even deer, like, people say the wolves follow the deer to the yards. Well, because they're saying wolves are only in like 80 square miles. Hey, that's their, each pack's range. So that's like 8 miles by 10 miles. Okay, so you got this square or whatever, a rectangle. Anyway, and of course they're not just shaped like that, but generally, hey, so it's 80 square miles. And if they go out of that area, they're like running into other packs. They're running into trouble. Hey, they can't just move freely because there's another pack here. It's going to run them off. There's another pack over there or over here. That's going to you're going to have this conflict. Hey, they're going to be fighting. And so they kind of stay in their area, and that is all fluid. But so I think, so like all the wolves don't follow the deer to the yards. They only follow them so far, and then they're done. Then it's like they got to kind of make do. Hey? So what happens in the moose core area? So those deer move out. They go to Skaney or they go quite a ways south, and those wolves that are in that area are kind of staying there. And what do they have to eat? So what's been happening with our moose population? It's really not growing the way it was. No, and I was on this Moose Advisory Council when the moose numbers were growing like almost 10% a year up until like 2009 or something. Well, that was about the point when wolf numbers got to a certain point. And wolf numbers got to a certain point, the moose numbers slowed right up on their growth. And I don't know how many adult moose are being taken. Nobody knows this stuff. But there's no studies going on. There's nothing. Hey, and anyway, but how many moose calves are being taken? How many twins do we have? The twinning rate's been going down for years, and the number of calves per cow has been going down. Well, you have wolves in this area that, what else do they have to eat?
There's no deer.
There's no deer, and yeah. So, they can only eat so many beaver. They can only catch so many beaver, hey? What do they do in the wintertime when the beaver are all in their dens? So it's like, so it's not just deer. I have concerns about our moose too.